Good afternoon. My name is Alex Krieger, and I'm the chair of the Department of Urban Planning Design. And so on behalf of our dean and the faculty and students and staff of the school, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Graduate School of Design. There are many familiar faces, of course, in the audience, but there are many new faces, which I think is really wonderful. We're proving this afternoon that Harvard does not operate only under its somewhat infamous every tub in its own bottom philosophy. We can share in the organization and in the pleasure of a rather extraordinary event. So the lecture this afternoon by the Honorable Mayor Ebrard of Mexico City, who will be formally announced to you in a minute, brings together the Kennedy School of Government, the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies, and the Graduate School of Design. And it is also the formal occasion for presenting later this evening of the 2009 Roy Family Environmental Award to Mexico City's Metrobus system. So may we have more and more frequent such occasions for learning and celebrating collectively. And to introduce Mayor Ebrard, please welcome the Edward Mason Professor of International Development and the Director of the Rockefeller Center, Marilee Grindle.
Thank you very much, Professor Krieger, and welcome to all of you. It is my very great honor to be able to introduce the mayor of one of the largest cities in the world, Marcelo Ebrard Casaubon. As Professor Krieger indicated, Mayor Ebrard is at Harvard today to participate in the announcement of the Roy Family Environmental Award, which is awarded by the Belfer Center of the Harvard Kennedy School. The recipient of this year's award is the Mexico City Metrobus system, and it has been of great interest to many people across the university to learn more about this exciting innovation in public transportation. Mayor Ebrard has long been an important actor in the life of Mexico City. He has been Secretary General for Government Affairs in the city, a deputy in the National Congress. He has been Secretary for Public Security for Mexico City, and then its Social Development Secretary. And then, of course, in 2006, he was elected mayor. Throughout this history of public service, he has championed environmental issues, the democratic governance of the capital city of Mexico, peaceful resolution of conflicts, financial sector transparency, and innovative poverty reduction programs. As mayor, his priorities have been environmental protection and the control of greenhouse emissions. Supporting the Metrobus experience, which significantly cuts carbon dioxide emissions in the city, is part of his commitment to these goals. So thank you, Mayor Ebrard, for being with us today, and we look forward to your remarks on sustainable megacities, which Mexico City certainly is. After your remarks, Professor Krieger will moderate the question and answer period. So thank you very much. We're delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are very pleased to be with you this afternoon. I'm just arriving from Mexico City because yesterday, you know, we have a really busy day. And so I prepared some remarks in order to share with you. I don't know if okay, thank you very much. So the issue here about sustainable mega cities are they? Let me start to share with you some figures. This is Mexico City, the yellow limits here. This is the Mexico City government jurisdiction. But really, you are talking about a metropolitan area which is really as a country. If you take the figures about all the metropolitan zone. So my jurisdiction is this, but I should and I must every day think about all the metropolitan zone. We have the last survey, the last one about mobility in the metropolitan zone of the Mexico City, which talk to us about 4 million people moving each day from those clear ones, localities and municipalities to Mexico City. 4 million each day. And then you have, okay, that's why we are talking about metropolitan area population, which is something around 21 million people right now. In case if there are, I know there are a lot of Mexicans here, maybe you are thinking about to run someday this thing. Okay, 21 million people are waiting for you. The water consumption in the city. Okay, we are importing right now 32 cubic meters per second to the city, which is one of the most expensive and complex systems on Earth, because we should put the water from a long distance and then using a very expensive system to dump, to put the water from 1,500 meters to more than 2,000 meters. So it's a very expensive system. Vehicles, 3.75 million each day. And trips per day in the city, more or less 28.3 million. Those kind of services, this is the Metrobus, that's the reason why we are here. This is the electric train in the south of the city. This is the subway system, which means 200 kilometers in the city. Those are new initiatives well, this is not really new, but this is the new one. And the taxis, all of them are responsible for 80% of the trips per day. And the cars, 20%. But the city was planned for the cars, not in terms of public transportation facilities, really, until recently. Well, one of the most important problems in our city is about mobility and about the vision that we have and share with the people of the city about what kind of city should be Mexico City in the next years. So we organized mobility in the city in this way. In 1904, we have 10 kilometers per hour as average speed in the city. In the 60s, which is this photograph is from the 60s, the average speed maybe were something like 20 kilometers per hour. But what happens today? We return to 8 kilometers. Smart solution for the city. So the only thing is that our quality of life, it's below the levels that we wish and we want to have, and we are sending a lot of pollution to the atmosphere, and so it doesn't make sense for the future of the city. So the question here is, okay, what kind of city we want to have in the next 10 or 20 years? And this is the first question. If the answer is, okay, let's rethink the mobility of the city, so you can have the question. We have a community, we have a city which is thinking on their pedestrians, on their people, and not only on their cars. This is a simple question, but it's difficult to really have a public policy in order to reach this policy. Why is it so difficult? Because it's very expensive in the short term, in terms of elections. If you say these kind of things in a year before the election, maybe you are going to have surprises. Okay, so what kind of policy with a new vision? What kind of things that we are thinking on? Okay, let's start saying, how are we going to build a community if we have a city very unequal today? So the first objective, in order to build a new vision for the city, in order to really walk to a community, is to have equity, to have social facilities for everyone. That's why social development is so important. We have 2 million people in poverty in the city right now. And in the metropolitan zone, maybe twice. So this is a key issue. The other thing related to social development and this main goal, education. Okay. Why education? Because if you take a look about the Mexican figures about high school, you are going to find out that more or less in the country, more than 40% of the young people who should be in the high schools are in the streets. They don't have opportunities. They are not inside anything about the future of the society. So it's a really key issue to solve. Okay, the other thing, if we have community, if we have social development, human development, we can have security. All the way, the question is, how many people do you want in your jails, in your prison system? We have 40,000 already. 85% of them because robbery below 10,000 pesos, which means $1,000. Okay, the other thing too, if we have all of this, we plan to prepare the city at the same time to have sustainability in the middle term, which means change of our behavior and vision in the city. And it means a new vision to share with the major part of the citizenship. So this is the idea. So that's why we are putting a lot of efforts in the health systems. We have new systems with the question of how to deal with the health issue in a cheaper way and in a faster way. Because if we plan to solve this issue in the old-fashioned idea, we should expect something like 20 years to solve the problem, if we get the money. So we are going to each house and we are sending the medical service to the poorest areas in order to be sure that they have the medical prevention and that we can plan the situation for those 2 million people who are below the poverty average. So this is the kind of things that we are doing. Other thing that we are doing with special interest is about the science and technology in the city. What about the economy for the future in the city? If you ask today, what kind of economy do we have in the city? Services one, whatever that means. Services, which means what? Which means which kind of economies that we have. So we are leading a really important effort in the city in order to improve the education and science and technology in our public system, in order to be sure that really the majority of the people can have access to the new technologies in the city. This is the main task, to improve the connection between the Mexican community, scientific community with the international one. Next year, we are going to have several, forum and congresses in the city with this idea. Okay, and we have the Green Plan. What is this? The Green Plan is to have a new vision in the city. I talked several minutes ago about sustainability and ecological concerns. So this is a Green Plan, natural resources, public space linked to the Green Plan, not as an idea isolated from a new vision of the city. Water consumption, water use in the city, transportation facilities, the air quality in the city, the waste management in the city, and the energy, and obviously climate change. What about the climate change? We have a plan also to reach this goal. So, but the main idea is to have several objectives, a vision for the future. We have a climate action program in the city, and our goal, the main goal, is to reduce more than 11% of the total emissions in the city, with several measures to, mitigation, adaptation actions, communication actions. I'm going to speak a few minutes to this kind of new ideas in the city. This is a problem in the city, emissions in the city. The most important one, transportation. So, and those are the goals, and it's going to cost more than $5 billion required in the rest of the administration. The other thing in this new vision of the city, the urban development. Well, okay, let's put money and new developers, new developments. This is the main avenue in the city. You have here right now more than several towers like this in investments, but we are requiring them to put money in the green issue and the green economy and the green buildings. And they are doing it because, they cannot have the permission for the investments in the avenues of the city, mainly in this one, but also because the water is going to be expensive and more expensive and more expensive. So it makes sense to really take note and to have new buildings in the city green planned, as you can see here. This building is going to start next week, and they have the greenest project, and I think in Latin America, and maybe in comparison with several cities in North America. This is Reforma, which is the most important avenue, but also the regulations about the new buildings are in several parts of the city, not only in the most important part of the city, the most active in investment trends, but also in other parts of the city. Public space is another great theme and goal for the city, because, as I mentioned, the city was planned for the cars, not for the people. And this is the most important thing to do in the short term. We can change things in the city. We are putting money in the main public spaces of the city. This is Plaza Garibaldi. This is going to be the Tequila Museum in case you visit Mexico City. I'm going to leave the map. This is an important area of the city, a traditional one. This is going to look like this one. It's a mariachi school, in case some have musical inclinations. This is a very traditional part of the downtown area of Mexico City, which right now it's abandoned, but we are putting money in order to reopen the public spaces. This is the Plaza De La Repblica, which was planned for the centennial commemoration in Mexico City as the Congress, the National Congress of Mexico, but then they have a logistical problem and they have a revolution in the middle. So they interrupt the building of this. Now is the Revolution Monument, and this is a very important square of the city, the second largest. And we are also building a new public space here, a very important one. This is going to be also a green-friendly building in the city, aware of water facilities and green areas and new technology in the construction system. This is the downtown area of the city. We moved 15,000 vendors from the streets, and we started to recover the street. This was in the past, this is right now. You don't have cars here, and the idea is to rebuild and rethink the downtown area of the city, which makes sense because I was talking just a minute ago that the past museum that we put in the Zócalo, in the main square of the city, had 13 million visitors in 4.5 months. So it makes a lot of sense for the city. Those are the kind of initiatives that we are taking. And this is Madero Street, which is a very important street in the city. So we established, this was this was in the past, the recent past with the cars, and now you have a pedestrian zone in this street, and we are going to follow this in the next month for other streets, important ones. This was the previous situation in the street, and this one, in the downtown area of the city. And this is community. That's the idea. Because in the past in city, if you don't have public space with quality, you have, a kind of different cities. If you have enough money, maybe you have a special mall to visit each week. If you don't, you go maybe to Chapultepec, but you don't have community in the city. So it's important to share a vision about the future of the city, but also to have public spaces to have a community there in such a great city. Okay, this photograph can tell you the kind of trouble that we have with the pedestrians. You have here, several signals, the public phone. It's just a heroic decision to be pedestrian in Mexico City sometimes. To reach the street and then to save your life and reach the other part. So we are taking decisions like this in order to clean the spaces, to mark the pedestrian zones, and to have new facilities like this. Those are old models, but new use for the city and in this avenue, which is a very important avenue. So the issue here is to really change things for pedestrians in the city. We also are working with, the water consumption, the water facilities of the city. This is an important symbol for this because Magdalena River and Eslava River are the latest rivers alive in the city. So we should recover those rivers. So this is the situation as planned. We started 2 years ago. And next year, we are going to have an important actions in the middle of the river system in order to reach this objective, to mark a new period in the life of the city. Because in the past, we used the rivers as, waste management systems, cheaper ones, and we forgot about the water. And the water today is maybe the most important goal and risk for the city. Mobility in the city, which are new initiatives. Metrobus is the most important one. The subways and new new systems in the public transportation facilities. And bikes. We are promoting the bikes. In January, we are starting in the city bike station system like Barcelona, similar to Barcelona or Paris or other cities in the world. But also we are closing important avenues, this is Reforma, for the people who want to share, for instance, you can have your dog, you have the bike, or you have several options, and we build a community in the zone. I think it makes sense. The goal to reach in the bike issue is to pass from 1% to 5% in the transportation and mobility in the city to 2012. This is the goal that we marked. Also, those are the ecological, that's why they are green, taxis in the 90s. So those are in the major part the technology which was designed in 1936, the Volkswagen, the car of the people. So this technology was replaced right now. We have a new kind of technology. And we changed the past 2 years 45,000 taxis. Next step is to introduce in Mexico electrical cars to public transportation, mainly taxis, starting in 2011 with a Japanese agreement that we signed 2 weeks ago. So, and finally, that's why I'm here. Metrobus is a bus rapid system which was prepared and planned by several institutions. Centro para Transporte Sustentable, World Bank, several ONGs, and the Mexico City government, and they started to work in this project in 2003. 2005, they started the first line, and now we have something like 50 kilometers and 450,000 people daily using this system, instead of old and very dysfunctional for the city little buses that we used to have in this avenue. This is Insurgentes, which is one of the most important avenues of the city, across the city from the north to the south, from the south to the north. And now we finished the second line of Metrobus, which connects Iztapalapa in the east to Tacubaya in the west of the city. And we are going to start in the next weeks the line 3, which is this one. And those are the kilometers right now. These were the kilometers when we started the government, and we are right now here. And we are going to maintain this priority for the next years. This is the Metrobus stations before. We improved those stations. It looks like this. And now, to be sure that really the new Metrobus facilities have 100% accessibility for more than 100,000 people who can use these systems but cannot use it in the past years. This is only an access. Can be expensive, complex, as you can see, but it's very important because they cannot reach the stations, so we are improving this. And this was maybe one of the worst parts of the city, the old Tepalcates station. This was really incredible in the middle of the city. Right now it looks like this. And when we are talking about public spaces, we are talking about also the connection between several means or modes of transportation in the city. You can remember that 80% of the people uses public transportation in the city. So it's very important, this kind of initiatives and investment which is related to this. To this point, the Metrobus really have an important effect on the goals that the city has marked in the reduction of emissions, the gas emissions in the city. This is another initiative that we took recently. We are using in a different way those tramway that were bought by the government in 2005, and now we are using all of them in one of the most important avenues of the city. So the issue here is change the vision of the city. Pedestrians are before cars. Public transportation facilities are more important than only to expand the vehicles facilities in the city. Those are the main goals of the city. You have here the Metrobus, the subway that we are building also. It's an important thing to share with you. The change of the taxes system in the city, and we are introducing new technologies in order to compete solar cells, for instance, with the gas facilities, because the gas price in the city has been increased by, 25% maybe each year. So it makes sense for the people to open the door to new technologies that really can be important for them in terms of the payments that they have to do each month. So the question here, we present recently also an energy plan for the city. We spent, as other cities in the world, a huge amount of energy. This new vision about the future of the city means that we should take seriously the issue of our energy management in the city. And finally, the Mexico City government think that if you take a look about the cities on the world, the major part of them are taking really important decisions in the climate change issue. But the national governments are behind. So in the next month, we are going to have the Copenhagen meeting. This is a global issue. It doesn't make sense to take decisions only in the cities, to have goals, ambitious ones, only in the cities, if they are going to postpone in Copenhagen again a serious agreement. So we are working with another cities in the world in order to present to our national governments and the national authorities and the global authorities also the idea of really take urgent decisions, not to postpone again the crucial the most important decisions to the climate change. Well, those are some remarks. Thank you very much for your attention, and we are expecting for your opinions and questions. Thank you very much. Aquí contesto.
Taking a few questions.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. And as you said, this is a worldwide issue. I was speaking with the mayor beforehand and mentioned that our mayor had just won re-election, and you had said he must be a lucky man, not because he won, but he only had 600,000 people in Boston to worry about.
Not because of the election, but because the number of people.
There's a Harvard tradition of following a lecture like this to ask the audience to make comments and ask questions. So we should start right away because I know that you have a difficult schedule. So please, and there are folks with microphones running around, I believe. Yes, sir, right there. Raised hand. Just a minute. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is, if the Metrobus is such a great system, I'm just curious why to spend all that money, time, and political effort you have spent the last weeks in building more subway, if you can spend all the money in the Metrobus.
Yeah, good question. The reason is one. In order to connect the south of the city, the southeast to the southwest, you don't have the option right now because you have a narrow avenues. You know, you have a really impossible way if you put a Metrobus there. So the only solution for complete the subway system in the city, in this part, which is a key one, is to build a new subway. You cannot do it with a Metrobus. No, there are no alternative. That's the reason.
There's a question here. Yes, yeah, sir with the glasses.
Thank you. My question is regarding where will the capital come to fund future sustainable projects, specifically in Mexico City. Do you envision this mainly to be funded through the government budget, or do you see a tendency towards public-private partnerships and more private? And what steps are you taking? Thank you.
Very good question. Well, you have three ways to do it. First of them is to reach private-public associations. As a matter of fact, Metrobus is a public-private association, very successful. It's not a private corporation or initiative. It's not a public one. So you have a strong leadership from the government. Here, here is the director of Metrobus, and he's taking notes. So it's a strong presence of the government, but you have a public-private association. This is a very good idea. We are going to look for this in the waste management system, also to improve the private participation in the water management of the city, because we have 4 companies since the 90s managing in the city the database for the water system. So we should improve this participation. Okay, this is the first of them. The second one is to look for private investment, which means to go faster in this project, because otherwise it's impossible to have $5.6 billion in 3 years. It's just impossible for Mexico City, and in terms of budget or public spending. So we are looking for private investments, which and makes sense because they are going to be very good business, and can be very good ideas for the city. And the third one, the third way to do it is to really have a better management of the prices, the tariffs, and certain decisions in the city, which can be very expensive. For instance, Metrobus, they don't have right now a subsidy from the government. On the other way, on the other part, on the other extreme, it's a subway, because they have a heavy general subsidy for everyone, which is not the best way to do it. So we are rethinking the way to manage services like transportation facilities or water systems with a more, let me say, smart way to put the money in those public services.
So first here and then there, and then the gentleman there.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, Alicia O'Hara from Mexico. Marcelo, I want to ask you, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very good. And to ask you, what is the vision of the mayor of Mexico City in terms of density? Because you are talking about sustainability, you are talking about building green, and for what I know, Mexico City is very expanded, the sprawl is there, and the density is not as high as maybe we would like to have it in relation with the transportation system, just as in other models like Curitiba or in any other cities that use the high density in coordination with the transportation systems. So please, if you can give me your vision for 2050, let's say, for Mexico City in terms of density. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. Well, let me tell you that Mexico City is not growing in population terms anymore. Mexico City, which is a completely different situation in the metropolitan zone. What's the issue here? In the past 10 years, you have 400,000 people who changed their residency from Mexico City to the metropolitan zone. So what to do about density? We should put a lot of efforts in Mexico City in order to open housing opportunities to the people in the city, which means change, for instance, the Infonavit policy about the final price of the apartments. Recently, we have a meeting with them in order to change the policy, because the actual policy is putting a lot of money outside Mexico City from the savings of the people who work in Mexico City. So it doesn't make sense. So I think that we are going to have an agreement for the next year, I hope, in order to change this. We are working with the banking system also in order to open a new door for the people below 5 average salaries in Mexico City, because this is the key issue. So I think that we should improve and to have higher density, mainly in the east part of the city, which is a city with only one floor. If you have an overview of those kind of buildings, like the photograph that we see. And the other thing to do is to put money, financial money, with the banks, with other systems, saving systems, in order to open another opportunity to the people who has actually one floor. Why not? They have the property. They have the grant for a certain kind of credits in order to build the next one, in order to have higher density in the city and to opportunities to the people who actually lives in the city. Well, the other question is, what are we going to do with the people who reach the labor market of the city but actually lives in the state of Mexico, in the metropolitan zone. And I'm afraid that our actual political organization don't have any response for that, which is a very important one. Because all the fiscal, the fiscal arrangement in Mexico City is about residents of the people. But you have 5 million, 4.5 million people, which works in Mexico City, but in the night they return to the state of Mexico. So doesn't exist for the public policy and administration responses and budget responses. So this is a key issue. And I think that we should have an agreement, really an agreement with Mexico State and Hidalgo State and federal government in order to have a metropolitan authority in certain areas. Because otherwise it's impossible to reach an agreement and to reach a response and a vision of the mid-term. Not in every kind of issue, but in certain issues it's necessary and should be in the short term.
The lady in red there, yes, thank you. And then the gentleman in white, and then down here,
Okay.
yes. Right.
Thank you. My name is Doris Summer. I teach in Romance languages. And I'm very impressed with your presentation. I congratulate you and all of the judges who chose to present the prize to you. I'm curious if there is a cultural component to your project. Are you activating citizens at the level of their behavior as well as making the infrastructural investments? And, you may sense that I'm very interested in the conversations that the City of Mexico and the City of Bogota have been having. So my question is related to that history. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Yes, we are working with several ex-officials from Bogota, MOCUS in the first step, and also with the actual government of Bogota. Well, the issue here is how to deal with the cultural issue about the behavior of the people and the vision about the society and the future of the society and the law and what's right, what's not, what's wrong, what's okay for the people. So we reach 10 behaviors to change in the city in the short term. For instance, the gum issue. If you visit Mexico City, you can say, why is so many gums in downtown area or in other parts of the city? So it's the most aggressive behavior against your community, against yourself, even in a very important places of the city. It's very interesting. Okay, so how to change this? So the goal is to change this in 2 years through participation, community actions, school system. Okay. We choose also other behaviors, more complex ones. For instance, the doggy issues in the public parks of the city. But because you are talking with the middle classes, well-formed, well-educated, so why not? Let's ask them to be care about their dogs and disposals in the public parks. So we are working this, and we are measuring it through surveys each 3 months. So it's interesting to have this information, and it's a key issue. If we don't change those things, there are no vision for the future of the city.
Gentleman there, yes. And
Thanks. The changes you described sounded absolutely fantastic, and they sounded big. And big changes, even when they're fantastic, normally have nightmare politics associated with them. So I was wondering if you could tell us about the politics of getting this done.
Slow down a little bit.
So we have
Make a quick question.
time to listen to you. Don't worry.
I was hoping to hear about the politics, about how you got this done. In particular, where did the political pushback come from? What were the alliances and the tactics that you used to overcome them? And how you managed to get some very big changes through what must have been a very complex political system?
How do you implement your policies?
Well, let me say, in the first step, the climate change in Mexico City, for instance, during the campaign, the political campaign, was not a very important issue. Only for a very specific constituencies, but not in the general campaign struggle. Why not? Well, because you have unemployment, you have the safety issues. There are several issues that compete for attention during the political campaign. Well, in the first year, when we arrived, we present the green plan to the people and asked the people to approve or not the main measures that we propose by the time. Several measures. So you have an important participation. And that means support for green measures in the city. Well, then you have the Metrobus issue. The Metrobus really was a very good idea and is today because you have results for the people, because you waste less time to get your office or your home, because it's a dramatic change in comparison with the old-fashioned style buses.
Not me, however, right?
No, not you. Sorry. The buses, not the bus. And so it makes sense. So you are gaining momentum for the next initiative. Certainly, there are other initiatives that are not so easy in the city when the initiatives cost money, for instance, or when the initiatives affect the behavior of certain groups. For instance, if you say, in this city, we are not going to allow, the commercial, the Walmart or Comercial Mexicano or whatever. If you say you cannot use any more plastic bags in the supermarkets, really it's a battle. So they are fighting the battle right now. It's just the bad. We are starting about the waste that they are generating in the city. So you, as any other kind of political strategy, you should combine victories like Metrobus with another more complex battles, and be sure in your strategy, don't put all the battles at the same time. Doesn't make sense, obviously. Sometimes common sense. Sometimes if you forget this, you can lose a war.
So we have about perhaps 5 or 6 more minutes because we don't want you to be late for getting your award. So there are 2 questions down here, and then maybe one more, and then we'll call it a day. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for being here. My question relates to the population density in the city. You said that there's still the possibility to grow probably upwards. My question is the city actually prepared to receive more people? Because you talked about the problem with the water, maybe the sewer systems, electricity, transportation. You also said in your presentation that new buildings in Reforma are now green initiatives. So besides this kind of response from the city government, are there any other mechanisms that help if more people come into the city because of the problems they bring with them?
Yeah, let me explain the issue. I think that makes sense for the city to have another density in the west part of the city, because other way, if we don't facilitate to have a higher density in those parts of the city, what's going to happen? The youngest people is going to reach or look for a new place in the Mexico state, an hour and a half from the city, more or less. So it doesn't make sense, like a public policy. On the other hand, I'm not saying that we are going to attract more people. That's not going to happen in the city. Not in the way they used to be. The problem right now in the metropolitan zone is that you have a very important growth, population growth, in the metropolitan zone, not in the city. Why not in the city? Because the city is much more expensive than the metropolitan zone. So the question here is how to deal with 4 or 5 or 6, maybe 8 million for the next decade. 8 million people traveling each day from the state of Mexico to the Mexico City to work, which means water supply, electricity, energy, public transportation facilities. So that's why we are proposing that we should create a budget and institution with a metropolitan idea. Let me give you an example. You take the subway in Mexico. The subway in Mexico, the costs are 16 cents dollar, which is the cheaper in the world. Okay. So you take the subway, and only in 2 cases you have the line just from Mexico City to Mexico, the state of Mexico. But all other the lines are ending. The end isn't the limit between the Mexico City and the state of Mexico. Why? Because the subway has been paid by Mexico City for a long period of time. So we are asking for the national authorities and our neighbors to say, hey, it doesn't make sense. We should put money in a metropolitan system. And we should think in the metropolitan population, which is this kind of people who travel to Mexico City. So we are fighting for this. We are going to have population growth in terms of metropolitan population. We are not going to have an important population growth in the city in terms of residents in the city. But we are going to have the pressure of the services of the city to attend the metropolitan population. We don't have the response yet in terms of budget, public spending, and some sort of metropolitan authority in transportation, for instance, in order to connect the subway to the metropolitan scale in the short term.
We are running a little bit late, so perhaps the two of you can ask questions at the same time, and the mayor can then answer both. So, yes, ma'am, you, and then the gentleman behind. Yeah.
My name is Fernanda. I'm a student of the Kennedy School. And my question is, it was a very nice surprise to hear about your vision, and I agree with you, of Mexico City. But as a potential user of many of the services you were describing, one of the things that hindered me from using them is insecurity. Like, I would like to use a bike as my means of transportation there, but I can't, or because I'm afraid of what might happen if I get out at 9 p.m. So I would like to hear about your vision in terms of security, and if you have any innovative policies.
And then last question,
okay.
The gentleman in the back. Yes, and then, yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay,
yes,
then.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, for your time and your words. I just want to push an idea forward, and since we are right now talking about sustainable megacities, I would just want to say that we can talk about sustainable megacities. We need to start talking about sustainable mega regions, if you will. And it's something we've seen through your conversation now, the separation between between Mexico City and the state. There's one factor which you mentioned briefly that will determine, you know, what's the hot issue, which is water. And we know, you know, water in Mexico City is almost like a state secret. It's a way to control growth in the city. So thinking about the whole region and water being the key issue for the future, what would be the overarching strategy for that? Thank you.
Security and water.
Okay. Well, let's the easy ones. Well, safety. Let me try to explain briefly my vision about this. I think that we have in the city this kind of trouble. We have 85% of the people in jail today from robbery, which is a very important thing to understand. So we should take measures to be sure that the people feels and really are inside the educational and the health system, and they have opportunities in order to change the trends. If you take a look, for instance, to the neighborhoods in Mexico City during the past 25 years with problems, high crime rate, for instance, Tepito, Doctores, Buenos Aires, they are the same. I mean, it's a social network working against the others. So this is in the middle term, we should put attention on this. In the short term, we should improve the reaction capacity of the institutions in order to provide security to the people. So we are right now installing in the city 8,000 cameras, which is a really an important initiative for the government, because I don't think that there are no way to really improve the situation in the short term, meaning next year. So we are using the technology because right now we have 8,500 policemen in the city in real terms, each 8 hours. And you have 2,000 patrol cars in the city. So it makes sense to put the video cameras because that means that you are going to have twice the actual patrol system with the car patrols or, you know, the old-fashioned style issues. So that's the kind of things that we are doing right now. As far as the main problem in the city is robbery and those kind of things like this, you have a strong link between the economic growth and the path of the crime rate in the city, except for kidnap or except for other kind of crime, which is important also, mainly for the effect of those crimes on the society and the investment in the city. But the main part of the trouble is this kind of, you know, robbery in the streets, robbery in the bus stations and those kind of problems. And so it's highly related to the growth economy or not growth or recession economy. So what are we doing right now? We are supporting 230,000 young people on the public system in the high schools. Why? Because it's very important, crucial for the city to maintain them inside the educational system and prevent them to abandon the schools in this economic situation. Because those young people are the main objective of the criminal organizations. So we're working with the cameras and with this kind of measures in order to improve the situation in the city. what the results are, in order to close this brief comment, we don't have the same situation that we had in '95, which was my main concern a year ago. Because this year, we have, as you know, the worst situation in the economic history of Mexico since 1932, according with the official information. Or at least it's the same situation than '95 maybe in some figures. So the main issue here is to prevent in the crime rate that we don't have in Mexico City the same situation than in '96 and '97, which was really a disaster in the city. For instance, the stolen cars, by the time it drops to more than 150 daily in '95. Now we have 72. Okay, we are worried, but it's a half the part of in '95. So the main concern right now is to prevent the city to have the same situation that we had in the past recession. And I think that we can make this in the next year if we maintain the public investments in the city and if we maintain the private sector investments in the city and other measures that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Thank you, Fernanda.
We'll talk about water another day.
The water system, maybe next time.
Yes, next
Sorry.
time. Now, you are about to receive a major award from the Kennedy School of Government, but it is not the first award that Harvard has given to Mexico City.
Nope.
In 1996, the Graduate School of Design gave a major award to actually work that you had done, but the award went to the former mayor. And this was for the work involving the restoration of the downtown area, the historic center after the earthquake, and also the restoration of the Xochimilco areas. So since you did not get that award, we would at least want to give you the book that describes this award to you 13 years later.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.